Hello everyone, my name is Harvest Keeney and I am one of CCI's Birth Parent Search Reunion interns for this summer. I'm very excited to present my internship project, which is this webinar series called For Now. This two-part webinar series will be focusing on birth searching, but the less glamorous side, specifically the unsuccessful parts. Additionally, we will be discussing how we as adoptees can empower ourselves and find acceptance even though there might be missing pieces in our lives. You've made it to the first part, so welcome. And today we have 3 Chinese adoptees who will be sharing their stories and experiences with birth searching. Let me introduce to you guys our lovely interviewees for today.
So my name is Kelsey. I am from Anhui, China. I was adopted in 1996, and I'm currently in the Midwest.
My name is Jen. I was adopted from Fuzhou, China, and I'm also in the Midwest.
Hi guys, I'm Jessie. I grew up in North Carolina, and I'm adopted from Yueyang, Hunan province in 1997.
Great, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you guys all here today, and so let's get into the video. And so for our first question, if you guys could share about why you wanted to search for your birth parents and how the search process began for you guys.
Okay, so for me, I actually didn't want to start a search for my family, just because my biological family, because the process of trying to find someone in China with all, how many people there are and not speaking the language, and also just knowing that it was going to be like an emotional roller coaster wasn't something that I was interested in at the time. But kind of for me, it was like steps into wanting to look into my birth family. So my friend, who's also adopted from China, she was more interested in finding her parents, and then she and I met, and she told me about that, and we actually wound up doing the 23andMe DNA test, which is really common for Chinese adoptees to do to find siblings. I didn't find any matches or anything like that, but that kind of was like the first step for me in that opening that realm of, what does it really mean to like look for a family. And then just last year, in May, I actually had gotten a post from my friend saying, hey, I seen this poster of a Chinese family looking for their missing child, and it sounds really familiar. And and so she sent me the image of the poster, and sure enough, it sounded very much like my story, which was a father was looking for his missing child that he had lost in 1992, which is what my anticipated birthday was in January. But for me, and they had the child for about 3 months or so, and that's exactly around the time frame where I was found at. So at that point in time, I went ahead and decided to backtrace where that post came from on Facebook. I found the original person who posted it. She got me connected. She had informed me to go ahead and download the app WeChat, since that's how a lot of individuals would communicate. And this family would use that app. So I was able to get in touch with the father. And from there, he connected me with the mother. And so we started a conversation, talked about, kind of just, what happened to the child and stuff like that. And I didn't go into details or ask in-depth questions because I didn't want to, pry into a sensitive topic necessarily. I know for the father, he was actively looking, but the mother wasn't. So I just kind of gauged kind of how they felt about and how they answered the questions. I also was kind of skeptical too, because I didn't want to, I don't know, it's maybe just me putting a wall up, but I was, part of me was afraid that maybe these people are just putting out a story to find people who are gullible. And so it was me trying to make sure that, the facts lined up, and it didn't seem like it might have been like some type of scam or something like that. But everything really checked out for the most part. Everything was consistent. And that's pretty much how it started. So
My story, I don't know how to describe it. I really didn't care about finding my birth parents for the longest time. I think it comes from growing up in a predominantly white community. I kind of pushed that part of me aside. I was the only like person of any Asian descent when I graduated high school. So like it wasn't something we talked about, like my friends, my family. And then I went to college. I watched the movie Lion about that Indian boy who was adopted and went to like New Zealand. And that like brought up a lot of emotions like I wasn't ready to deal with, but like it happened and it was like a lot to like deal with at once, especially like going into college. And so I started asking like my mom questions about like my like where I was found and like other things. Like I was at a the Fuzhou like welfare institute, so you couldn't really get a lot of information from them because like usually it backfires anyway. So then we did ancestry.com, and then I found like Facebook groups. Like a lot of things like for me happened on Facebook because I was like finally meeting people that kind of related to me. That was like the first time that ever happened. So I put some Facebook posts out, and then I did ancestry.com like I mentioned previously. And I just like found like fourth cousins, like nothing was super successful. And then like school just got like really busy. So I kind of like put it to the side, but also was like would randomly like go on like this one website that had a bunch of like child ads for missing children and just like scan it for like hours on end. And then yeah, that's like how it started.
So a little bit about the why. I think I was a little bit different because from a young age, maybe 4 or 5, I really began thinking about my birth family, particularly my birth mother. And I kind of always had this child vision or kind of magical dream that maybe I would look for them one day and find them. So throughout my childhood, I was keen on finding my biological family, but obviously with a child's perspective. I didn't really know exactly if I had gone and proceeded with that route, how that would actually look like. But as a kid, I thought it was a great idea. I kind of put it on the back burner growing up because, again, like the other girls here, we were in predominantly white spaces. And so it was hard enough being like the only Asian kid. So I didn't have time to think about searching for birth family or whatnot. But on my birthdays or on Mother's Day, I always thought about them and I hoped that they cared about me or remembered me. And as the years evolved, I have begun to think more and more about them and what a relationship with them, if I were to find them, would look like. So my story is kind of a little, I guess, odd because like these girls, I didn't find a birth family. They found me, more or less. So I was adopted in 1997 from Hunan. And 2 years later, in 1998, my sister was born. And then in 1999, we went back to Hunan to adopt her. So when we revisited the orphanage, a woman, I was 3 at the time, I don't really remember, came crying to us, very emotional, and my parents hadn't really seen her before. And she identified herself as my wet nurse. So this is something that I don't really know much about. I don't know if other Chinese orphanages did it, but apparently I had a lady who also had a son close to my birthday in August, who fed me with her breast milk and gave me nutrients during that time. So we took pictures. I was 3, so I don't really remember, and we lost contact. So I heard that a family was going back to Hunan to go back to the orphanage. I sent them with a flyer or a poster to kind of relocate that woman, to tell her, thanks so much, for giving me this nutrients when in 1997, 1996, a lot of babies were just not taken care of. So I just wanted to send that letter back. And it happened that the letter was handed to my wet nurse in China. So we connected on WeChat. It was exciting. She sent me a message that literally said, I am your Chinese mother, in Mandarin. I'm like, who is this? Like, how did they get my number? What is going on? And then I remembered that I gave them a poster, and they're talking about she's talking about not my biological mother, but someone who nursed me in the orphanage. So we talked for a couple of years, and then soon that kind of led into her guiding me to a family that might have been my biological fit. So that's kind of how that all went down. So I connected with a wet nurse that I never knew I had, and then she kind of led me on this journey to a biological family.
All right, great. Thank you so much for sharing. So where has your birth search led to you in terms of results? Where are you guys at now in the process?
For me, I continued to talk to the father and the mother for a few months. And the father, unfortunately, for some reason, disappeared. And I don't know really what ever happened. I asked the mother if she knew by chance, because they didn't live in the same household. They were divorced at that time. And she had reported that he had possibly gotten arrested. And so there's most likely no chance of ever being able to speak to him again, at least. I continued to talk to her until around December, and then I lost contact with her too. The reason I was continuing to talk to them or her is because I wanted her to do a DNA test. And originally the father, of course, was going to do the DNA test, but then disappeared before. So that was really frustrating because he had, in the chats and everything, agreed to do it, and then he, wasn't able to. And then so I was trying to convince her to possibly do the DNA test. 23andMe isn't allowed in China. So I went ahead and joined with my Taproots. What they do is they help you create a profile on Baby Come Home, and then when your DNA is in their system, they can translate it, and if there's a match, they'll call you and let you know if there's a match. So I went ahead and did that process, and so right now I'm waiting for some type of results. But with this family, they hadn't done any type of DNA test at that point, and I was trying to explain to them what it was about, and they're very guarded about it, just because for a lot of Chinese individuals locally, it's free to do a DNA test in their, but just go to the police station and they'll do a one right there on the spot, and the citizens don't have to pay for anything. And a few times she tried to convince me to come to China to do it. I was like, that's not really possible. I'm already in the United States. So as much as I want to come across halfway clear across the world to do a DNA test, I was, that really isn't feasible at this point in time. I tried to explain to her that, if we matched, through this DNA test, I would gladly come over and visit her and get, established. But, at this point in time, I couldn't just see myself invested in this one individual that had no clue whether or not we were going to match, So around December, for some reason, when I texted her, it was around Christmas time, she never texted me back. And we had been talking fairly regularly, about like once a week and whatnot. And I couldn't figure out why she wasn't texting me back and messaging me anymore, and I did this for several weeks, and it's like, it's like she just disappeared too. And then around January, they started talking about COVID, and I was like, oh shoot, like, could that be the reason why she hasn't contacted me? It was like, that part was devastating to like realize like she could be gone. Yeah. And so yeah, and if she was, if we were biologically, related, then I'd never know, because she never did the DNA test, and both parents at this point were, they didn't have any other living children. So, and I didn't know any of her other family or anything like that. So there was just, I don't know, it seemed hopeless and sad. And it was kind of like, I like emotionally invested in this, and then it just seemed like it, poofed into nothing. It's like all that time, and then she was just gone. So, my DNA is still in their database. So if by chance she wasn't, that family wasn't my family, biological family, then, maybe there'll be a possible match. But that link right there was, the closest thing that I had to, and closest reason why to even try to do a search. So yeah.
Well, I kept just like going on the website and like searching and searching. I still have like my raw DNA that Ancestry.com lets you keep. So that's still like in my file. I don't know what I would want to do with it right now, but my search just kind of like stopped abruptly because it was just like impacting like my emotion, like my mental and emotional like health so bad. Like I like think it was like I was trying to find like a piece of me and like who I was, but like in the process, I think it was like making me feel like even worse about myself. Like if I don't find my birth parents, then there's like then like a piece of me is always gonna be missing. So that was like it was at, it was hard to stop like searching like as frantically as I was because like I still think about them, and especially because of COVID, like that like makes me like feel like really hopeless too. Like if I search and like nothing comes up, like is it because like they're still alive or like something actually like did happen to them and I'm never gonna like have that like chance to meet them. So that's like where I am, like where I'm at right now. I like at a standstill.
So back to the wet nurse. The wet nurse connected me, I think in January of 2019, with a family. And then again, I get an email and it's like, I am your brother. So 2 times where it was kind of like clickbait, and I definitely clicked on it and was like, what? So this guy, a couple years younger than me, was basically told by the wet nurse at the orphanage, go ahead and contact her. They might be, or she might be, your middle sister. So there was an older daughter, then it would have been me, and then the biological younger brother. So we talked, and it sounded like their family completely moved from Hunan to Guangdong. And I guess I just didn't think about how the fact that maybe they could have moved, or maybe they could have moved abroad. I lived in Spain for the past 2 years, and there's a ton of Chinese people who relocated there. So that kind of changed my perspective, firstly, because my birth parents could be mobile. And so that was something that was interesting for me to find out. And so then we kind of corresponded, got some more information. It sounded like the birth date was right. It sounded like where they left me was right. It sounded like everything was coming together. So I contacted Lon and Brian from researchchina.org. They are helping biological mothers find their adopted children in China by going around and taking DNA samples from biological mothers in China. So I messaged her and was like, can we get a DNA kit over to China for to see if this is a match? So they went ahead and got a kit for me. We sent it over. It took a couple months. And they were eager to get the DNA back. And it turned out it was not a match. So this was emotionally tougher for the family than it was for me. They had emailed me saying that they had been searching for their daughter for 20 years domestically. The mother missed me or the baby on the birthday every year. They were invested in finding their daughter. And so when it was not a match, they were devastated. And this is all through Mandarin too. And I have like a baby level of Mandarin. So I'm like, don't cry, don't cry, over WeChat. So it was a hard emotional blowout for that family. And so I felt like I was kind of coaching them through, yeah, okay, I'm not going to visit. But when they're like, oh, you can always come visit, you're going to always be our daughter. And I was like, this is a lot. I mean, these are strangers and they're still strangers. And at the end of the day, I think they took it a lot harder than me. And I was not expecting to be in this position or this role of comforting them. Like I thought maybe that we would be comforting each other, but it turned into a comforting them thing. And that really made me sad for them that their baby's still out there, and sad for my biological parents too, that, if they're still searching, they haven't found it yet either. So the story didn't end happily, I guess, for their side. But for me, it provided a lot of clarity, because as we were getting more and more emotionally deep, I realized, like, what am I doing here? Do I want a file on me, like a binder with like, oh, Jessie, this is when she was born, this is her medical history, this is the family history? Or do I want a full-blown relationship with the family, like good or bad, thick or thin, emotional, non-emotional, like we're in it to sort out all the emotional stuff together. And so when it wasn't a match, I think it was actually a relief for me because I finally was able to identify as an adult that I'd prefer the binder. I would just like a binder on me, and I'm more cautious about an actual relationship with a family. But I know you can't get one without the other or get the binder at all. So it's one of those things that I guess I'm still would be interested in maybe sticking a poster up, investigating further. But yeah, I got into a lot emotionally delving into that. So it made me mindful about taking care of myself, and being kind of cautious when developing those relationships.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories. I think it's really great that we can come together as a community of adoptees and share our experiences, as each one is very personal and unique. Please stay tuned for the second part of our webinar series, where we will be discussing birth searching in terms of acceptance, but also empowerment through the process. So we'll see you in the next one.